Nowadays, there is so much bullshit out there, uh, and everybody has their own agenda, as it were. And it just gets kind of irritating, especially with a lot of fucking Nazi ass shit that's being spewed around online, especially nowadays, as even within these campaigning period. It's like, okay, you want to call it anything what it is. It's like, oh, it's not Nazism, it's fascism, or it's, uh, Christian nationalism. But if you really listen to a lot of the shit of a lot of these groups and look at their writings and what they plan on doing, it's not just the far right. There's also whack jobs everywhere. But I can't stand is when it's blatant out, telling you exactly what's happening, and yet you're just believing other shit, not, you uh, people that are for Trump that go along with his bullshit, not fact checking any of this shit, and you follow them because you believe, oh, he's our savior. He will bring us to safety. He will bring our nation to the heights of exhalation. It's like, no, no, no. See, the thing is, Trump is a rich man that does not give a fuck about you, the nation, nothing. He can claim whatever he wants. All he wants is to make sure that he is in power because he likes control and he loves fame, but he's also a horrible leader. He does not know how to actually lead. He believes of if you rule something, you have to do is have a bunch of lackeys that do all your bidding and they actually do the actual work and do everything else when you don't actually do anything. You just the figurehead. In other words, he wants to be a puppet ruler, I guess, but also being more like a retarded version of Hitler. Yeah, if you look at it, the same kind of line of bullshit he's spewing is similar to Hitler's, and also with the Nazi regime itself, and the same thing with the far right extremists, because if you go too far, it becomes, fascism towards Nazism, the Nazis are a nationalistic party that are complete fucking whack jobs that blame everything on, a scapegoat, Basically, they blamed it all on the Jews, but they were also against the communists, socialists, the worker parties, the trade unions. They're against all them, and they were against democracy. Um, all of this guys under with nationalist fever and stuff, but it was a despotic dictatorship that just relied on hatred and fear. So, uh, yeah, it wasn't like Jews were executed in concentration camps. That's what we always told, but it's not just that. You got what was other Christians were thrown in there that they just hate. Like, well, the Mormons fucking killed a shitload of Mormons, if you didn't know that. They also do that with the Jehovah's Witnesses. Round them up and fucking kill them. Put them in concentration camps or, kill them outside and shit, They've done this. If you ever think only the Jews had was this, like a symbol on their patch that was the Star of David, they wore that and shit. No, they had a patch for every form of religion that, of different denominations of Christianity, including Judaism and, all this other shit. Were they atheists? No, they weren't. They only believe in their form of Christianity, and that was it. And Hitler was actually a devoted Catholic. Yeah, he really was. The higher members of the SS, they were going into the weird mysticism round, and they wanted to do was go with this bullshit that was from a really bad science fiction book from the turn of the century, which a lot of people have no fucking clue why they came up with all this nonsense of the Aryan race and saying, well, the actual Aryans are, like from the Middle East and they're darker skinned and shit, like, yeah, and then and same thing, there's different variants of of what you get, kind of the name Aryan, like from the Middle East to Anatolia and parts of Africa, because just how it is. Of the actual Aryan peoples had nothing to do with that. Same thing with the whole racism of skin color, of like, oh, white people, we're called Caucasians because we come from the Caucasus Mountains. No, dipshit. Actually, no. The guy that created the whole bullshit of, the Mongoloid, the Caucasoid, and all that different fucking bullshitazoid, he was racist as fuck and he was setting his agenda. He liked his own skin color, his own peoples, well, European. And the only reason he called them Caucasians is because he liked the Caucasus Mountains because they're very beautiful. That's why. It has nothing else to do. It's like he knows that Europeans did not come from the Caucasus Mountains or ever live there. There's already a set of peoples that live there. And by the way, the Caucasus Mountains is in Anatolia. So, Now, when the far right and other, conservatives and stuff like that, the ones that are not super far right, if you notice, it's always the right side, especially politicians, saying all these weird ass terms that they're claiming that the left is saying. I'm like, have you ever listened to any of the left politicians? None of them saying that shit of the ridiculous forms of gender identity and all this weird ass shit that makes you sound like a fucking moron when you don't know what a woman is. The only one that keeps on claiming that nobody knows what a woman is the far right. And then other people that are dipshits that literally are, feminazis, basically. These are usually white women that are man-hating, and they think all men should do is transition to be trans women and to be castrated, and they still would not be, good enough. They would be like still not even second class, like 15th class citizens compared to a woman, But it has to be only certain women. And if your skin is, darker or whatever, depending on your ancestry, they just basically hate anybody that's pale. You can be of African descent, but yet end up with a skin condition where you end up really pale, They will consider you white and they will hate your ass. And, by the way, they pander towards all this bullshit saying, oh, Black Lives Matter. Only certain black lives. Black males and anybody that's transitioning from male to female, and same thing with female to male, they're excluded. They hate them. Just actually listen and read their rhetoric. You find out that it's those kind of people that say this. I'm not far right or left. I'm center. I don't really follow either side because both sides have mind-numbing bullshit. Just how it is. Because if you go too far left or too far right, you return around and literally run into each other. And you're wondering, like, you can't do that. Yeah, look at the far extreme left that we've seen in history. Stalinism. You're saying, what's that? Okay, it derived from communism. So you got Marxism, which is a form of communism. And then from that, you got Leninism, which, is a different take on it and controlling of the government. Lenin wasn't really for to do was take over and having it as a police state and like literally killing people on the streets. Lenin was more like, let's have an upheaval of the government system and have it more equalized across the board, and he wanted more of a communal state where all the resources is gathered and distributed equally upon the whole society as a whole. That kind of ideology works well if you're a village, but when it's going into like a big country, it sounds like it would work, but you have to understand people are fucking assholes. Just how it is, and that's why you end up with Leninism, with the Bolsheviks, where he took over the country, and he pretty much lost it. And he had was a warning for his own guys was he did not trust Stalin, because at the time, Joseph Stalin, he was a quote unquote hitman, but he was also the security, or basically he was a bodyguard of 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 the Bolsheviks. He was just this big dumb bulky guy that is violent as fuck. But he ended up killing people. That was part of Lenin's crew. Literally, he was like just wiping out people so he can gain control. And then it's speculated that he also assassinated Lenin, because for some reason Lenin died, but nobody knows why, and his body was preserved, and it's still preserved to this day. You could actually go visit the tomb of Lenin and see it for yourself of how much preservatives, and they still keep on adding it just to make sure that his body stays pristine. Because he's still part of Russian history, no matter what the government has changed, into, and and Stalinism is a more extreme of within Leninism, to where he turned it into a police state, to where it was pretty much identical to Nazi Germany in all regards, where he was secret police everywhere and had people to do with out people. There was a little boy that literally outed his parents, and he lived on a farm. He was declared a national hero, by the Stalin, the Stalin government, in Russia, But the village considered him a fucking traitor to his own people and to, his parents. So they fucking killed the kid. So when they fucking killed this little kid that literally sent his parents to die, and didn't give a shit, by the way, because he was brainwashed and he was just a little kid dipshit, he just basically fucked over his own family, and all of the things that his family had, property and everything. Yeah, he fucked himself over because he thought, I'm doing the good thing, stupid little kid. And the village killed him. And guess what happened? The Russian government, they decided to do was declare him a national hero and make a statue where that village despised it and spit on that fucking statue of that kid, cursed his soul for all eternity. And a lot of these things even have been passed out. Like with the Jehovah's Witnesses, if you didn't know, that they did was gathered money to do is rescue people, like Jews from Russia, and send them to the Holy Land, and also to do is help out Jehovah's Witnesses that are in Russia to get them out when it was communist. That's what the Jehovah's Witnesses did, try to smuggle people out to safety. Because during that period, like during the Stalinist period, it was really tough. And then after, when he died, there was like kind of a power vacuum, but they decided, you know what we're going to do is get rid of everything that is Stalin, including wiping out some of the good things that was being developed. The whole projects of the massive city. Because if you notice, all these assholes that claiming that they're doing it for the betterment of the society as a whole, but really they're doing it for the detriment of the society. They want to destroy the society at whole. Every single one. They claim that they're the savior, but really they are the destroyer of these nations. You know, Hitler had was this extreme. If he really cared about his people, then he and still had a hatred towards all these other people. Instead of wasting your power and money and resources of creating extermination camps and killing them, just export them out of the country. Just literally port them out. That would have been the better solution, and he would have looked a lot better on history as a whole. Same thing with the Nazi Party as well. Hitler, by the way, he was actually a very smart guy, but he was a lazy ass ruler. He burned the candle at both ways of doing a lot of things. He likes speaking and making speeches. He's really good at that. He was trained by a Jew to do this. And also a racist German, And people say, oh, Hitler is actually Austrian. No, he's a German nationalist because his village actually is part of Germany, even though it's on the other side of the Danube, on Austria's side. They decided not to be part of Austria. They're actually part of Germany. That's just how it is. When Germany was created, they decided, no, we're part of Germany. We're not part of Austria. Germany. And before that, Prussia. Yeah. Go fig, motherfuckers. So, a lot of the shit that's happening in America, a lot of people are not doing their research or their history, actually learning from history. We're at the same period as what was happening 100 years ago. Actually, a little more than 100 years ago, but we're expediting it too, to going to like how it was in the 1930s, It's like you want the whole Nazi regime kind of, even though it's under a new name, to be in this country. We fought for freedom, and to destroy that, even though that the United States is actually a nationalistic society, governmency in a lot of ways, but not to the extreme of Nazism or anything, or even fascism, which is also nationalistic. And by the way, fascists, majority they had was not the mass majority, but a great percentage of the fascists, of the original fascist party, the fascists, were Jewish. That was their religion. There was people of all different faiths within Italy, but fascism, or actually fascists, they started what would be fascism, but their doctrine was a little more easy. It didn't have to do with your ethnic background or your religious background. It didn't matter. All that mattered was your national identity, and if you were a citizen of Italy, that's all he cared about. He wanted was a nationalized, get the people together to nationalize it. But he was also good at the photo op. He ran to all these different places, had photos taken of him like scooping dirt or whatever, doing something. And it'll look like that he's helped building Italy back to but he would just pose for the photo op and then leave and do another photo op. So it always looked like he was this madman that was physically there doing all this shit, when he really wasn't. He just was there just for the photo op, even though these things were pretty much being done or staged. Plus, he liked to do is mythologize. He liked the mythos of this romance view we had, especially at that time, of ancient Rome. especially during the Empire and the Republic periods. So you want to bring back that majesty. So what he did was had built was a fake Rome, which if you read it and know some Latin, if you were able to see some of the what it says, like the signs and whatever, it would say like street, fake street, and other things that said was this is a fake building and shit like that, But since it was further in the background, you didn't, from the photos and stuff, it was not really read too well, so you couldn't really see it. They made sure of this. And when it was built, they had was this meeting between Mussolini and Adolf Hitler, this big old photo precedence and whatnot. Yeah, but the fascists end up going the wrong route is when they connected up with the Nazis, and then the Nazis took over, and that's when you had the death camps and stuff, because the original ideology had nothing to do about exterminating of people based on ridiculous things. It never had that in their thing. Even though Mussolini was severely hated by the government, when he was trying to get in power multiple times before he actually did. One good thing you could say that Mussolini did, but some people say, oh, I hate that. Yeah, he was literally hated in Sicily, but he did was got the closest of completely exterminating the Sicilian mafia, because at that time the mafia was literally controlling of Sicily and reaching into the boot of Italy, literally making people's lives worse, and people were too afraid to say shit, because they would get killed and their families get killed, places get burned and shit by the mob. It was really sadistic. Mussolini decided, no, I'm going to get rid of this fucking shit because they're basically undermining everything he wants to do. It pretty much wiped them out to where they almost non-exist, for a long time. Until the resurgence when, after the war, that members of the Sicilian mob that was in America, which we consider, it's the American mob or the Italian mob. Yeah. Well, the fucked up shit that was already from the descendants of the original Sicilian mob that went to America before the war and stuff, before both wars, that thing kind of fucked up, all right? It was already a mess, especially the 5 families in New York. They got their asses handed to them by Chinese and also by the Irish. That's why the mob is actually in Jersey, because they were kicked off of the island and were told, if you fucking come here, we're gonna fucking kill you. They even went and killed them in Jersey and threw their bodies over there out in the open. They didn't care. This is the Irish did that. The Irish did was, back in the days, a lot of people don't know, was start some shit with the Italian mafia and stuff, within New York, have them chase him, and then he leads them into an area which was nothing but angles in every which way, and he darts out. Didn't take him to Hell's Kitchen. No, he took him to an area which is actually controlled by the Triad, the Chinese, basically, within, the Chinese control area, which is Triad, which is their mob, and they just came out of the woodwork of every nook and cranny, and even out of the sewers and shit, every which way, fucking slaughtered the the Italians. And also that were people that are connected, by the way. One of the best gangsters, like scary guy, really tall, and very deadly. Had pretty much the most kills in his lifetime. By the way, he was Jewish. He had no Italian descent whatsoever. is completely Jewish. And the Italian community that considers like the greatest Italian to ever live, was a movie star. And this guy portrayed to be a mobster, Italian mobster in America. He wasn't Italian. He was Irish. The best so-called Italian actor was an Irishman. Yeah. Yeah. But this all goes down to, what I said, like, there's nothing but lies everywhere. That misinformation. And it's obvious that someone that has an agenda that don't want the other side to be, or whoever, to speak out, they do is speak against them, constantly. Making up shit and try to reword shit so it sounds better and don't want you to read their documents or whatever of what it is. No. Just trust me when it says, don't read for yourself. If you notice, the ones they're advocating for Project 2025 and the ones that saying, oh no, everything that you've been told is a lie. I'll tell you the truth about what it is. You notice they never actually show you word for word the whole entire thing, or even give you a link to the download of it, or any of that. You notice that? It's just like, take my word for it. It actually says this. No, it actually means this. And a lot of times, the really damaging parts of it that calls it out for what it is, and they like say, oh, no. It's what it is a suggestion. It's not a roadmap or a guide that tells you how to literally destroy America from the inside out. No, it's a wish list. Yeah. Oh, Trump has no connection with them. Really? They're the ones that are backing Trump up. And they're part of his administration when he was president. And they were backing him then. And plus, now, they're also still within his group of peoples. He does business with them on a daily basis, saying, oh, I don't know anything. I never met any of them. You work with them. The fucking people around you is part of Project 2025, dipshit. A lot of people don't actually listen to what he really says. Like, literally. I already know his history. I don't really care for him or his family. Yeah. Just what it is. A lot of people that are for him, they don't know his fucking history. What I try telling people is, oh, that's smart. Like, really? How about if you actually work for him? You would actually end up hating what the fuck he did. I still think he's a great, yeah. My other problem is when people that don't show you anything, they don't really tell you to go look it up or have links or anything about, hey, here's the information, go see for yourself. If you don't believe me, you want to read for it, here it is. You want to find out, here are the, or they're the ones that will only show you damaging things, but, take it out of context of what it is, if it's positive or negative or whatever, or trying to hide the fact of some shit, for their own agenda. When somebody is trying to do is destroy the government, they're the ones claiming that they're the saviors of the government and saviors of the people, that they're fighting for our nation and making us great again. When have we ever been really great? I mean, during the 80s, we had this mythos that we were number one. No, we really weren't, but in our delusional mindset, we were number one since World War II. And here's also another fucked up shit that I really hate, because there are so many people that don't know the history or don't know what actually happened. Like, okay, the Korean War and Vietnam War. Okay, when the Korean War happened, it was not called a fucking war. It was actually labeled as a police action. It was not declared a war until way after the war ended. Then it's like, oh yeah, it's a war. For during that time, it was a literal police action. It was not, and plus, that was how it was mandated within the military, within the paperwork, even though the military personnel were, especially boots on the field, they were calling it a war because that's what it was. But, stateside, all the shit that was coming from the Pentagon and stuff, and the government, and also the media would say, it's a police, it's just a peacekeeping operation. It's making it sound like all the people were just handing out tickets or something, And same thing, they did the same thing again with the Vietnam War, except the thing was, the people weren't going to have it. It became an unpleasant, war for the public, is because they sent media there, and these guys filmed things in color and black and white, and got the film footage put out to the public quickly, and it showed was the very wretches of war, especially of that war. That's why it, from being a police action, turned into a war real quickly, is when people were starting to actually get, actual information and seeing for themselves from these images, photos, and also from film and stuff, of what it was really like on the battlefield. It's like, it was horrendous. People don't understand is that why we pulled out of the Korean War and the Vietnam War, why we did this. What is always being taught in schools and stuff is absolutely wrong, and it's also what people blathered. It's absolutely wrong. It's not because we had our asses handed to you and we're, running with our tail between our legs. No. What happened is that it became an unfavorable, situation of the war itself, stateside. So to appease the masses and stuff, we had to pull them out and end it. But the reality was that our units were literally slaughtering, the enemy and the local population that wasn't really part of either side. They were literally caught up, and that of the Korean War, and same thing with the Vietnam War. And plus, we were also slaughtering Chinese that were coming into the situation when it had nothing to do with them. It wasn't their fucking war, but they wanted to go in. Russia even said, China, just sit back and relax and watch the fucking show. Don't get your people involved with this. They're like, why? Russia kind of was like, you know what, we'll use this as a way to fuck with American planes and use their version of the the Messerschmitt, which is the MiGs. And the MiGs were fast, but they couldn't turn sharp. While our planes were also, that we had, that were fighter planes that were based off of the Messerschmitt, the Me-262 actually, because we got some Me-262s, and the Russians also got Me-262s, from World War II. Except the Russians went for, going for more speed. We decided to do is go for a sharper turn. So, and plus with ours that were based off of the Me-262, or what most people say, it's a Messerschmitt. You realize that it's not the name of the plane. That's the company's name, Messerschmitt, but its name for the plane is ME-262. You know, well, I'm not going to say the number in German, but you know, 262. Yeah. Jawohl. Anyways, so yeah, and it was called the Lancers. So the Lancers and the MiGs were so fast, they were bypassing each other, and if a MiG got behind, the Lancer turned sharp, while the MiG had to turn really far, you know, it was a wide turning. So by the time they were able to turn around, the Lancer was already fucking gone. See, these guys were in and out of each other's airspaces around the area of southern Russia, you know, the southern Russian border and the borders of, you know, of North Korea and stuff, and right there, like China and whatnot. And they're just zooming around, you know, and it was ridiculous. Neither one really got a good shot of each other. There was a few cases that happened, but most of the time, they were too fast to really engage with each other. And they're not even the fastest planes that exist up to this point. We have even faster planes now than then. Fast planes don't really do well over areas where it's small countries because you end up going out of bounds real quickly. And the way that Russia was trying to do was show off their military might with the jets and like saying, no, we're not going to take this bullshit of you intervening of our territory or whatever near our airspace. Yeah, they're like going on the defensive, saying, oh, we're just defending our space, you know, our area. But it's really to show their capabilities, especially to the American military. That's what it was for. To show off, hey, this is what we did, dipshits. And we went, yeah, go fuck yourself. You can't turn on a dime like ours. Ours are really goddamn fast. Yours is only a little bit faster. But in turning radius, your planes suck. And China just basically takes copies, literally makes copies of other things and destroys it. You know, it's like, during that time, if you found was an AK-47, and if it was Chinese writing on it, your best bet is to drop that and leave it alone. Not because that it will blow up, that it's explosive, you know. No, that's a Chinese knockoff of the the Russian AK-47. The thing is, the Chinese knockoff is so badly made, and it was extremely dangerous to the wielder of it. Yeah. A lot of times, yes, it did explode in your hand, and was backfired. That would literally kill you or severely injure you and stuff. Not good. Yeah, if you want to put it in video game terms, we were just farming for XP in the Korean War. Yeah. Our best unit that we had was actually Marines that were on the ground, because they were placed in some shit ass area and they just stood around and just slaughtered, and they were just given more and more deadly equipment, you know, of weaponry, and they just mowed down people left and right. There you go. Yeah, slaughtered. Hundreds of thousands to maybe even close to millions of it continued on. Yeah. Could have just easily wiped them out. And it wasn't just one unit, it was like several Marine units. Plus, the Army was also doing the same thing, because the Army was the first ones with the boots on the land and doing a lot of shit and damaging and literally fighting their way northwards. The Marines only were dropped into certain areas which already was pretty much cleared out by the Army, and then when start coming backwards, the Marines were just, okay, we're gonna fucking XP. But the thing is, when Chinese notice about the different colors of their leggings, as it were, because the Marines at the time had was a cuff, and they noticed it was yellow, and the people who were like that, they had you weren't going to survive if you see enemies with yellow cuffs. Basically it was our guys. They knew, oh shit, they have like heavy equipment. They will literally wipe you out. They don't give a fuck. You can have tanks and they will wipe it out because they had shit to wipe out tanks and other shit. Yeah. So these guys realize, wait, we're not getting, enough enemies coming at us, enemy fire. So you know what they did? They took off those things because they noticed that they all look alike, of the different, military units that were on the field, especially Americans. We all kind of look the same, more or less, of our uniforms. But only if you get close enough, you can tell what branch of service we're in, and also the ranks and whatnot. But certain, iconography on the uniforms. So the one identifier that the Marines had compared to any others was those particular leggings. So they took them off. And then the Chinese came in and thinking that they're going to get easy kills because they think these are, people that are green. Because they didn't realize that the army already pushed through, and then the Marines took the front end, in certain hard areas to basically stave off the shit. And the army, most of it, was doing heavy artillery, literally destroying cities from a distance, miles away. And then if we listened to MacArthur, he was a smart man. He warned us about the Russians and the whole situation way beforehand, and he even specified was, this war we should just carpet bomb and lay waste to everything, just blow up all the mountain areas, like just literally fucking mow it down, of the north and whatever, and firebombing, just scorch and burn and just non-stop carpet bombing. He didn't want us to put boots on the ground because he knew that would have been a difficult road to hoe, that a lot of lives would have been lost on all sides. This would have been much easier to wipe out the enemy from an aerial assault, and if they hide underground, and he knew they would, to literally bury the fuckers. There was also other ideas was to do other things similar to this. Nobody listened. Vietnam, yeah, it actually started much earlier than what is depicted about when the war actually started, because it's North versus South that really started it, and then America and all these other countries also came into Vietnam, just like in Korea. A lot of countries got into it. It wasn't just the U.S. The U.S. was mainly farming for XP in Korea. Vietnam, yeah, we end up farming for XP in Vietnam. Again, MacArthur specified to carpet bomb the whole area, to scorch and burn tactic, like literally burn all of North Vietnam, just burn the communists, and also to lay waste to their hiding spots, to bury them. There was also suggestions to do is literally just throw concrete in and cement and stuff, basically just concrete right into the fucking holes. What we had was quick cement and quick concrete, bags of concrete and shit. We could just done was mixed it and just dump it into the fucking holes instead of putting people going through it. Just seeing, if you see a hole, didn't matter if a person could fit or if it was like for an air vent, start pouring concrete in there, fill it up, bury the fuckers. That was a suggestion to do, to fill it up in any way possible, But they also did was flamethrowers and explosives blow up, but not realizing there was like so many bends and turns up and down, left and right and shit, you know? And it was just nothing but corners. So if a guy went in there and you had a light, there, you would see it as a wall because there was corners every which way, you know? Nothing like a straight way. And even if it was semi-straight, it was like bending up and down and left and right, you know, like snaking around and shit. But there was also harsh, you know, right angles and stuff. It was meant to really be useful for the defenders to defend their underground bunkers. And by the way, these pathways went throughout north and going down into South Vietnam and stuff. And they got their tactics actually from an ancient Chinese manual of combat. Yeah, that's what they did. And same thing with Korea, also took from example from ancient China, even though that Mao Zedong was literally trying to wipe out his people, his culture, and language. The only reason Chinese exists at all as a written language, the way it is, he wanted to wipe out everything of it. Like literally turn it into Fing Fang, you know, that kind of writing system, you know. It's basically Japanese version of Romanji. Kind of the same thing, but even more fucked up. That makes no real sense, you know. But it was Stalin that said, no, dumbass, don't do that. Well, he didn't say dumbass, but he was like telling him, don't do it. Your best bet is actually is keep Chinese the way it is. But he still didn't like it. He didn't like the people, the culture, the language. He hated everything that was of China, you know, of what you would think is China. Because you have to understand, when Mao Zedong came around, there was no unified China. There was all these subgroup of countries, you know, that are not China, but end up making what we know as China today, you know. So, yeah, he was an opportunist and stuff. He almost wiped out his populace, you know, when he unified and whatever by taking it by force. So they made what is simplified Chinese. And if you notice, like in some videos where they try to get a Japanese person that knows kanji and stuff very well to do is start reading some shit in that's in Chinese, but it's it's reformed Chinese. You know, it's Chinese from communist China, not Taiwan. Taiwan actually just uses the old form of the Chinese writing, but the newer form, you know, which is designed on purpose to control the language, so certain characters were omitted because it's specifying of freedom and individuality and, you know, just wanting to control the language. And if you take out certain characters that make up that kanji or the word itself, you know, alter it so it doesn't have the same contents as it once did of its actual meaning. You know, just how it is. So you got somebody that's from Japan that knows, but doesn't know that, and starts reading and is like, I have no fucking clue what this is. They kind of guess, more or less, but it still makes no sense. You know, it's like, this is bad kanji. It's like, who the fuck written this? Are they retarded or something? Yeah. Communists. What do you expect? But Mao Zedong pretty much almost wiped out his people by trying to do his, you know, say, look at me, Russia, look at me, which, you know, hey, Stalin, look at me. You know, it's like, Stalin's like, dude, don't do that. It's stupid. Just, Russia didn't care, actually. They had them as a partner because they needed them as a buffer state. That's it. They can use them as a catalyst and sick them onto whoever they want. That's what they do. The Chinese think, oh no, we're real good partners. Yeah, you're cannon fodder. That's what you are. So is North Korea. Every communist nation that Russia was connected with, they were just there for being a buffer state. That's it. And, a lot of people just didn't understand that whole thing. And Vietnam, yeah, we were farming for XP. We were slaughtering people left and right. If we continued, we would have just wiped out all of North Vietnam. It would have been completely wiped out of that. But we were also doing was a weird scorch and burn techniques, such as doing similar things what MacArthur was saying, firebombing. But we were also doing something that was really more fucked up than anything else, and it's still fucking up all of Vietnam to this day. And this is what is known as Agent Orange. The reason why it's called that is because the containers that was in of Agent Orange, the containers were orange. It was actually like a neon orange, highlighter orange, as it were. There was different shades of them. I've seen photos of this shit because they had different chemical compounds and they were trying different ones. But the guy that created this was meant as a defoliator, and it was meant as pesticides and whatever. And if large doses, it could actually literally wipe out plants, like literally having the plant drop all of its leaves, just wiping out the foliage. So it was used for that, and there was different variants of it. But this guy actually went to Vietnam during when the war was happening, and he was doing research on what was happening, the effects of the area after it was sprayed and whatever. Yeah, the military didn't just spray like just the forests. They were spraying over villages, rice paddies. Yeah, starving the people out from north and south. Just starving a shitload of people. Because there was pockets of fighting all over, Vietnam. So it wasn't like a traditional combat, because if you have a lot of jungle, you have is people decided, you know what, I'm going to hide up in the trees and start shooting down. That's what they did, Seems like the Marines that were sent there, and same thing with the Army was sent there, because a lot of people don't realize the Army was there as well. So was the Navy. Not just ships. We had was people that were on boots on the ground, and we had was the Navy SEALs, like small strike teams of 3 to 4. It's also specified like 5 people within these strike teams, but usually it was like 3 people, and they did was strike to blow up certain infrastructures, bridges and whatnot. That's what those guys did. They also did the same shit in Korea, blowing up bridges and stuff, train yards and whatever. They were set in just to, quick strikes and, get in, get out quickly. And a lot of that, they were never praised for it, or, saying, hey, they did a lot of this shit, which nowadays we want to say, oh, it's all the Marines, they did all this, they did the fight. Like, no, there was just one branch of plethora of other branches of different groups of military units from not just the US, but from other countries that were there, that were also fighting. We just don't want to admit, oh yeah, the British were there, so was the French. Like in Korea, we had was the English, the Canadians, the Australians, besides Americans. You had the French, and the Swiss, and the Greeks. There was also Italian units as well. There was also Spanish, it's like pretty much all of Europe there. And also a lot of European Union units were also in Vietnam. By the way, the Vietnam War was, North and South, but also France was in that war in the beginning. And they kind of pulled out once we got into it, and that's when we declared, oh yeah, the Vietnam War started. But actually, it started in the 1950s. While the Korean, and plus during that time, of certain things before it was like a major war, there was fighting here and there and whatnot. There was like little skirmishes and whatnot that was happening in the 50s more so, especially during the Korean War and stuff, But the real major shit that will kick it off to the Vietnam War, we sent was CIA agents in there and other covert agents to do with spying, but also they did was assassinations. Just how it is. Yeah. They went to really find out what the situation is, and what's going on, because we're thinking, okay, it's going to be another Korean War, but in Vietnam. We were already speculating this was going to happen, and we had to do was assess the situation. But there was also some of these units that went in that, besides like looking and watching and relaying information what's going on, the spy network basically, also did assassinations. Yeah, it just happened. A lot of that's not really told in history books, which is kind of ridiculous. Yeah. And I noticed that people that claim patriotism and all this, they do some of the most horrendous things that go against their ideology of what they say is their ideology for the country. They're true patriots. They're like for our military, when you just want to use them for cannon fodder, to your own means to do is control what you want them to control. That also includes the people in the government and stuff. So you're using that as your gun to go fucking kill your own countrymen. Just because I don't like what they say. If you're for this government and claiming that you want to make it great again, but yet you get so butthurt that people call you out for your bullshit, and you get butthurt that your name called and whatever, and you do a lot of trash talk and lying on your enemies, and yet you're claiming that you want freedom of speech, but you really want your freedom of speech. Nobody else allowed to have any freedom of speech, even your opposition. And plus, when somebody claims that they're trying to make a nation great again, to raise its capabilities, but telling you like, oh, you don't need to vote ever again. Once I'm in power, you'll never need to vote ever again, because we will have won. Yeah, he means him and his party. In other words, Trump has actually said that, you'll never need to. Yeah, he also panders to the Christians, and he's not Christian. He says, I love you, my Christians, even though I'm not Christian. I'm not Christian. I love you, my Christians, No, he doesn't. He says he loves the Bible. When he was asked, what verse do you like? There's so many of them. There's so many great ones that I love, but I can't name them all. I can't go into the specifics. I don't want to. Yeah, that seems like somebody that's never actually read the Bible. But most of these ridiculous Christians that say that they're Christian, they don't know their own fucking religion. They say they do. Have you actually read the Bible? Majority of them haven't. And if they do, it's going to be out of order, out of context, and also nitpicking of, taking verses out of context of what the actual meaning of it, just to turn it around to, oh, that means this. Yeah, read the whole entire thing from the very beginning. I hate when they only go for one verse and then switch. I'm like, They're not even connected or in the same fucking book. How they're related. Just read it from the very beginning of that particular book to the very end. Then you will understand what the fuck it means. And most of them have no idea. And I've run into so many of these so-called Christians that do this. You know? But for some reason, these kind of people are also like the Christian nationalists, which, by the way, nationalism is not a bad thing and it's not a good thing. It all depends on how it's willed. So don't really be too afraid of someone that's nationalistic, because all of America, you know, especially when I grew up, we were very nationalistic. We had the flag. I mean, back in the days, like in the early 20th century, you know, even before my birth and stuff, we used to do was raise the flag on all national holidays. That also include Mother's Day, Father's Day, yeah, Valentine's, you know, all these different days that you don't really think it's necessary. We used to raise the flag for these things. It wasn't just like it was like a law or anything. It's just something people did, and it was already written in. That's basically what you're supposed to do. Is like any national holiday, you're supposed to have the flag of the nation, and you know, our flags, you know, of our states and national flags on our buildings raised at full mast, including on houses and stuff. But it was never mandated like you have to do this, but it was like the codes of ethics of how you celebrate these holidays, like showcasing of your patriotism. And that's what we did for a long time. And then it kind of dwindled and petered out in the 70s more so. So, and then it just went downhill to like, no, we don't even really do that. Now we have people that do put flags out, but it's always for ridiculous things that is not of nationalistic pride for our nation. Most of it is like a fuck you to everyone except themselves. You know, like fuck the government, fuck the people, fuck this nation. And I usually tell those people, go fuck yourself, get the fuck out of here. If you hate it so much, there's the fucking door. Leave this fucking country. You know? It's not that fucking hard. You can get yourself a passport. You can actually do is renounce your national identity of the U.S. I suggest doing is trying to get, you know, a citizenship in another country before doing that. Because once you do it with the U.S., you have to go through the process as if you were never born here to get a citizenship here again. And you will be at the bottom of the line. You will be much further down. Because it will probably be on your record that you're an expat, and probably even specifying that you really hate this country, that you don't want to be part of it here. You know? Yeah. The thing here is that, you know, a lot of dystopian literature and stuff, you know, these dystopian stories that exist in the early 20th century and stuff, all the way, you know, throughout the 20th, you know. Most of it came after or during like World War II and whatever, and specifying like the horrors of Nazism and stuff. And a lot of it was literally a mirror of what happened prior to World War II, and adding some stuff to where a lot of these horrible regimes that were still in existence and popping up throughout the world, they're taking that as like a guide. And they really want it as a guide to do is destroy the world, you know? Because these dystopian stories are never meant as like, you know, hey, here's something you should do. No, they were like, don't do this, you dumb fuck. You know? Like, Fahrenheit 451.
and you probably know it under the Celsius if you're European. Yeah, I don't know it off the top of my head what it is in Celsius because that's it's Celsius title for Europeans, but basically Fahrenheit 451 is at the temperature which paper burns, which is. Um, the thing is, he was warning you, and if you read like the very first printing and also some of the anniversary printings, which kind of have like the old stuff and stuff and history about how it was, it does specify in there of his book is that this is a warning and specifying that it wasn't something that came suddenly. It happened over time where people decided, oh, I don't like this, and they went against it. And they, little by little, it was the people that eroded their own freedoms and controlling the narrative to the point where literature was banned, to where no one was allowed to know how to read and write. That's why all the pill bottles had colors on them. No idea about what kind of pill, what it was, or what it's for. And yet, yeah, the main guy, his wife, OD'd on that shit. Yeah. Also showcasing some of the weird scientific advancements, for culture. Basically, these giant flat screen TVs that were, like a whole entire wall. Yeah, we actually can do that and have done that. They're expensive setting a system like that, but some of the more cheaper versions of things like that is a projector, of the TV projectors, the ones that hang up on the ceiling and project it on there. Yeah, you can have those and literally project onto your wall. You can have a whole wall and just have same white color, or pull it down and have like a movie screen and stuff, and just have that as how your TV is, project it onto the wall and stuff. Since it's above, so like you're not going to block the light, unless if you get too close, then you will see that you are blocking the part of the image. But it will be on your back or front, depending if you're facing it or facing away from it. Yeah. Where book burning and stuff, and if you wonder why the fire department switched in that book, and same thing with the movie, they switched from saving people and putting out fires, and started making fires and burning things down. Well, the thing is that he was also taking the example of what was happening in Nazi Germany of the book burnings, the massive book burnings, and decided, and he saw that, this was happening in America and other parts of the so-called free world, as it were, of this kind of shit. And he just saw what was happening, and he realized that we can end up slowly going towards this way. And he just thought, how would this happen? Where it was from the bottom up of these kind of things, where it now became law, from people hated it, they banned it, and then it was like ends up being tradition to, actual law mandates and stuff, to where, reading and writing cease to exist. Any thought that was of your own has to be approved by the state, as it were. Literature of all kinds was to be wiped out to the nth degree. If you notice that in his list of books that were specified that was endangered, in his time when he originally written this, we banned those. Why? Like nowadays, a lot of that shit is banned. Like even Fahrenheit 451 is banned in parts of the United States. Why? Same thing with other dystopian stories, and he had it specifying of American literature from the 1800s, just because of the old euphemisms that it used, which now would be declared unfit. And other children's literature was to be wiped out of existence because it gave them ideas how to be a good citizen, that the society that controlled things, and same thing with the government within there, did not want people to do, like to literally fear everyone, out people for reading or not watching TV enough or shit like this. And the reason why the houses didn't really catch on fire or anything like that is because I know in the movies they caught on fire, they burned the whole entire building. Well, in the book, it's specified that the buildings were coated with asbestos. It was, and other fire retardants and stuff. So since you didn't really need a fireman to put out fires because the buildings were like fireproof, especially when at the time nobody really knew that asbestos was actually severely dangerous. It's a very toxic material and stuff, and also is prone to long exposures to it and stuff. You can end up having health concerns, including getting cancer. We didn't realize that. Hell, even Marvel didn't really realize that because they was a villain that didn't really have superpowers, but she was her suit was all out of asbestos, and she had flamethrowers. And what she did was burn buildings, catch them on fire, run inside, of jewelry stores and stuff, and steal all the jewelry. And she was coated in asbestos. She was an asbestos bag. And plus they over-exaggerate of the capabilities of asbestos, so you would have to have a pretty thick layer of it to be fully protected by it. But it was a good deterrent, fire deterrent. That's why we used it until we realized what harm it actually caused. And by the way, the first printing of Fahrenheit 451, the outer jacket was made of asbestos. And if you have one of those, they're worth quite a bit of money because not many of them were actually made, and very few of them that survived still have the jackets of the original asbestos jackets. I even had one of those books, with the asbestos jackets. That's gone now, but yeah. Ideology is dangerous, especially when it contradicts the ethics of the society at whole, especially like we want to say that we're good people, that we're for freedoms and stuff, but we contradict ourselves. I've seen too many praise of the Constitution and stuff and the Bill of Rights, but they only believe that these rights only apply to themselves and nobody else has the privilege of having these rights. And sometimes they over-exaggerate and believe that they're more superior than everybody else, which I've run into too many people that are like that. And too many people that think, oh yeah, I'm just conservative. And you start speaking to them, no, you're a fucking fascist. Or no, you're a Nazi. No, you're a white supremacist, that have Nazi leanings, that is for fascism, except these government sees you want to be the one in control. But the thing is, look at yourself. You're not of the thing that you're supporting, skin tone and shit like this, It's like, try to explain to these people, what if you got your way? You wouldn't be the one in power. Some other asshole would be. And guess what? Your head would be on the chopping block. And a lot of people don't realize that, I'm not this group or whatever. doesn't concern me if they get killed off. Yeah. There's a poem about that. About one guy was, in the poem, the character, he was literally saying that, they went after the trade unions and the socialists, each of these political groups, and saying, you know, it doesn't affect me or whatever. And then final lines is basically specifying that now they're going after him. Yeah. It was okay when the Nazis were wiping out all these opposition political groups and then wiping out the Jews and whatever, and you're saying, well, it's not me, so I'm fine until your number is next and they go after you. Same thing. There's wording within Project 2025 that specifies of transgenderism, but some of them try to blow it out of proportion of what it actually says, and others try to diminish of its value of what it actually says. It's like, oh no, they're talking about this and that. But if you really read it through, it's really talking about that it's wanting to forbid it nationwide, want it in some really backwards, strict, states where they're highly oppressive on human rights, especially with, somebody that wants to transition from one gender to another. Same thing with birth control and stuff. So if you get rid of birth control and also, all forms of birth control, contraceptives and stuff like that, the pill and whatnot, and also ban, abortions and get rid of sex education, then you're going to have is a problem with overpopulation of people getting pregnant, and you're going to have is people doing some of the batshit, abortions that was literally already happened in America in the 20th century and shit, where, they used was a coat hanger, which ended up killing the woman, doing irreparable damage, or just literally killing her while trying to take out the fetus out of her. Yeah. We're going to end up doing that again? Are you fucking crazy? If you get rid of all that, especially abortion, that's what's going to happen. It's like, oh no, we'll just, have it for every state, but they have to align with us. They can vote if they want it or not. And then other states that have abortion, they can do is people that want abortions have to go over. But yeah, that has already been done, and the states that specified that's against the rules on this, they said that they will even be fined if they get back home because they're a citizen of that state. You can't, it's literally they've tried this where people were visiting that, other state that had was abortion, trying to go after these people. I'm not of your state. Well, you can't have abortion when you're in our state. Well, we didn't have an abortion in your state. She had was an abortion in our state. Well, no. Shit like that did happen. A lot of it gets thrown under the rug. And I thought that was kind of weird, and I've seen of the footage of it, and a lot of it ended up disappearing. It's like, what the hell happened? And it's not just governments and ridiculous people that talk out their ass, It's also companies do this. You've probably seen the whole thing of Monopoly and stuff, the Monopoly man, his name is Uncle Pennybags. If you didn't know his name, that's what his name is. It's Uncle Pennybags, always has been, always will be. They say, oh, he never had a monocle. Yes, he did. Even in the original ones, they even had him with a monocle. And there is also without. And you seen that image of him running, like he's running really fast or leaping or something, and there's two images, one with and one without. Yeah, the one with the monocle, did exist in certain forms of Monopoly, especially the kids edition that happened in the 90s. You know, the kids version of Monopoly, you know, Monopoly Junior basically had that, had the jumping thing, and also with the Monopoly Man, you know, people just call him, oh, it's the Monopoly Man. It's Uncle Pennybags. Had a monocle. Yeah. Uh, they want to do is gaslight you. It's like, oh no, that never happened. Like, bullshit. A lot of the things that they want to say that it was never this way, yeah, it was. Like the Berenstein and Berenstein thing. But the problem is, that did actually happen. There was misprints, and also some people did was reprinted the books, like at least the covers, anyways. And some of them like went further to reprint the book, you know, like re-editing because our technology, you know, for the public can, you know, we have really good printers and scanners and stuff, especially in the 90s and whatnot. Gotten really good. It was, you know, and you can actually double print it on both sides, and you get really good paperwork. People did was made faked, you know, the Berenstein Bears or Berenstein Bears. You know, of the different spellings of you could have, even though it's word for the same book and everything with its original pages or whatever, its original art, just the name different. And I've seen that cropped up time and time again of different variants. But the thing was, you could tell with some of those that came out like in the 90s and the early 2000s, they were not perfect because there was like some errors and stuff like within the manufacturing of them. You can tell that somebody did was took a book apart and then remade the book and just kind of slap it together, or they did was just recreate the outside, like using Photoshop and stuff, you know, scan it in, edit it with Photoshop so they can have the cover that they want to showcase it as like a physical book. And a lot of times they just repurpose the actual book of what it was. Some went even further. That actually did happen. Someone would say that never did. I've seen a lot of them in, you know, flea markets and stuff. Mostly like shit around in California. Like people had yard sales with this stuff, you know, of different versions and whatnot. And sometimes people will do is sneak in libraries and switch out books on purpose. Usually people would take books out and make sure there's like no device in there, like they would rip that out and take the book out. It's because of two reasons. One, it's someone that actually likes that particular series of or those books. They like them very much, except they're cheap bastards or they can't afford it themselves to, you know. So they do is steal it. And I knew a guy that actually did this because he was really obsessed with like a certain series, you know, of comic books and stuff, you know. He liked reading this, and he was an adult, and he's actually a really nice guy, by the way, but he's homeless. You know, his situation's really fucked up, but he's actually a really nice guy, and he really likes books a lot. And since he has no proof of anything to show that he's lived in the city, you know, or whatever, he can't get, you know, a library card, you know, to borrow the books. So you know what he does? He takes out the track and treat in there. He takes the books, read them, and he does is puts them back in. Sometimes he just keeps them because he loves the series and stuff, and especially when he saw with certain libraries, they threw out a lot of stuff. He didn't believe that. I told him that's what happens. Just check their trash bins, and when he did, it was filled with books that he liked. And I had another friend that literally raided the library's trash bin because they just threw tons and tons of books that were, you know, first editions that came from like somebody's estate, and they just donated the whole entire library the state's library to the library, and they just cataloged it and then chucked it in the trash. They didn't put it in a library, in any of the libraries. And these were first edition books of all different subjects. I've seen it myself. It's like kind of fucked up. It was even in the papers about these books going into said public library, and nothing was said more. And I saw it in the trash bin, and I told my friend about it. Like, yeah, you like books, and yeah, and this one friend that collected all the first editions and stuff, and he was a big reader. He got himself a van and turned it into a mobile library. Basically, he had so much heavy books that it was seeking on all fours down. Like, it turned into almost a lowrider, So you gotta brace it more. But he loves reading so much and books, and he wanted to preserve them. He even got storage units filled with books, and he just went to libraries and like after hours, especially when he realizes when they throw out trash, especially when they're going through like huge things. I tell him, like, just look in the paper about states. They usually take about a few days to a couple of weeks to catalog the stuff, and then they chuck it because they have no real room for them. And he didn't believe me until I showed him, and it's like, oh shit, and that's what he ends up doing. And he saves and preserves these things, but he just doesn't know what to do. But these were like once loved, these were collectors, stuff, and he knows that he can't really let the public touch these things because they'll destroy them. Yeah. Oh yeah. The other people that go and steal books from libraries is usually people that hate certain books. So they will literally destroy them, mark them up so you can't read them ever again. And they've done this to Tom Sawyer. They would steal Tom Sawyer, not to read it, but to burn it or destroy the book, so nobody can read it. It's like, yeah, so much great literature just because you got hanged up about Nigger Jim. Yes, that's his name. He even said, the character even says his name is Nigger Jim. You know why? Because that's what he was called, and he was a slave. He escaped and ended up running into the two boys, traveling up the Mississippi. Because the two boys, were just fucking around and stuff on the Mississippi River, and they, Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn. And they met up with a runaway slave named Nigger Jim. That was his name. You're going to get upset because I said Nigger Jim? Well, that's the character's name. Get over it. It was the times, It's like, oh, it's racist. Yeah. Look in the mirror. You're fucking racist. Just get over it. That I'm just saying the name of the character. It's like, big fucking deal. I can show you images of caricatures that you would declare it's so racist, but the race that it's depicting was created by those people, because like a lot of like really fucked up characteristic pictures of Asians were done by Asians. Like, you can look at some of the weird fucked up shit that the Japanese did during the 18 and 1900s and stuff, and even further back, of these weird caricatures of Japanese people. Yeah. They just did that, So did the Chinese, so did every other Asian. They made fun of themselves. Nowadays, like in the Americas and stuff, especially in North and South, well, more so in like the United States and Canada, are really fucking butthurt if, people that are not down are depicted, satirical way, like over exaggerated form. Oh, it's racist. Ugh. That's why it's called caricatures. But it was for the times, and it was for their own peoples. So they were making fun of themselves and making light of it, didn't care if others took offense of it because it wasn't offensive to them because that's how they drew themselves in a very comical way. I draw this one Asian lady screaming because that's actually what she looks like, but it's kind of smudged, but it doesn't really show up on the camera. But yeah, she's loud as fuck. She says, "I'm not loud," but she is. She's Korean. She don't look Asian. Like when she starts screaming, this is the face that she makes, especially at this particular angle. But caricatures that was done in the 1800s and 1700s, like in America and Canada and Europe and stuff, of showing of other races, those caricatures was not to, just poke fun, but it sent a message to diminish and to belittle other peoples that were different from themselves, that they saw was vile or stupid or heathenistic or, primitive, and not realizing that the cultures they're making fun of is an exaggeration, and the majority of the people that were drawing these things, they didn't know anything about the people that they were drawing. They just had was this vague notion of what they're supposed to look like, and not knowing they didn't dress like that. They never dress like that, Like when King Kamehameha IV, when he came to the United States, in all the rags and papers and stuff, newspapers and all that shit, they depicted him horribly, and also of the Hawaiians saying that we're backwatered, stupid people, not realizing that we had was advanced technologies, We took what you guys did, started from being Stone Age peoples to excelling at modern technology for the day, surpassing the United States. We had was heavy and light rails and trolley systems and fully functional, healthcare system and stuff like that, and equality, even though that there was the Bishop Boys that were trying to undermine and take over the country, and which they did was at gunpoint, they raided the palace and pointed rifles at the monarch's head and forced him to sign doctrines. And then when he died, King Kamehameha IV died, his sister took over and she just said, no, undoing everything. Her problem was that she relied on the goodwill of America. Didn't realize that America decided at this time to take over everything, because beforehand, the Bishop Boys always wanted America to bring forces, and the presidents beforehand say, no. They're like, no, they're not our problem. We don't care. Kind of fucked up. If things go the way it is, and if it goes into the worst, I see is this happening. We're going to end up in the same situation as the ending of the Weimar Republic, to where, the Nazis took over, destroying the government from the top down and stuff, destroying the DOJ and all the other implements. Because if you can literally wipe out is the government, who could be in what position, specifying, switch every job, even if it's elected to an appointed position, then you can do is literally fire people left and right and get rid of all of Congress, the House and the Senate, just get rid of them. Switch their title, their whole thing about from being elected to now being appointed. Just, yep, get rid of them and get rid of the DOJ, you know? Yeah, once you do these things, like especially the DOJ, then you can literally get rid of anyone you want and change the narrative. Which also means that these kind of people are saying they're one is a Christian nation, saying that this nation was founded on Christianity. No, it wasn't. It was defined on the separation of church and state. We were the first nation to literally do this because we didn't want to be connected with any religious power to, like a head of any religion to oversee us. We didn't want was the papacy to have control of our nation. We wanted to control it ourselves, have it as the people control the fate of the society as a whole. This project, this ideal of forming a more perfect union, using the examples of ancient governancies and taking the best parts of them to form this nation. And it was an experiment. And on the chairs, it was a sun on it. And they did not know if it was a rising sun or a setting sun. Is it rising sun on a new nation, or is it setting sun on a failed experiment? We were called a great experiment for a long time, as such. That's why they consider the Americas as the new world, to like remake the world, to use the examples of the past and just learn from it and take only the good parts to build a better society, a better world, not to take over the world, but to create a new world, more or less. Which didn't really fulfill its intended goals. Too much shit happens, too much greed and hatred and stuff. But yeah, and Native Americans, I'm gonna say this, like from every tribe that has tribal lands, yeah, once they do that, they're gonna declare that you can't be another nation inside a nation. They will literally take you out. They would go, take away all of your rights, your property, even with them being like Christian nationalists, which means their form of Christianity matters, and then you would have to abide by their backward laws, and you cannot have any say or any power. And then also by ethnicity too, and skin tone and all this shit. They go against people that don't look like them or don't act like them, and if you're not part of their ideology and their belief system, and by the way, they're not even real Christians anyways, and they form sense of the word, and they don't understand what the fuck they're talking about. Even if they do, they just talk out their ass. And the Mormons try to think, oh, we have Utah, we don't, well, that's only one sect of Mormonism, what is it? Anyways, the LDS, Well, guess what? You're not part of their form of Christianity. They will declare you as a cult and wipe you out. Just like the Jehovah's Witnesses wiped them out. And every denomination of Christianity will be declared not the right one. At first, it would say, you have to go to church. Even if you're a Jew, you would have to go to, not to a synagogue, but to, a Christian church, or else. Or else what? Get killed, go in prison to get killed, loss of property, yeah. Things can get worse. But here's also the other problem. that the right and left, of the people on board, they don't understand how voting works in this nation. They think, I go to the voting booth, I vote, and I cast my vote, and that's that and stuff, and whatever's tallied up, whoever has the most votes actually wins in whatever position. Your vote only really counts for every other position except for presidency. That's why we have an electoral college. The electoral college is the one that actually votes for the presidency, since it's a ticketed thing. So you have is the president and vice president on the same ticket. Yeah, the electoral college actually votes the winners for that. You just vote for the popular vote. The popular vote doesn't always line with the electoral college. It's just saying, hey, this is what the mass of the majority of the populace voted. And it actually gets really fucked up when you really look at this. The lines are all fucked up. A lot of people don't realize this, is that the areas and the districts, they're realigned. Whoever gains control of writing the district maps in said state, they'll do the districts the way they want, of the voting districts and whatnot, the way they want it for their side, and make sure that the people on their side get the highest votes, have the most turnout and the most voters. And plus they go against the people that are marginalized, especially the blacks. They just no, they'll make sure that there's no voting in their areas, and they will control the whole thing. This still happens. Saying, oh, this was the past. No, it still fucking happens. We don't have a lot of the Jim Crow laws of the past, but they're trying to do it all over again. For God's sakes, why? Yeah. So whoever controls the districts will end up controlling, what is being voted, and they will make sure that their opposition and people of certain ethnicities don't get their chance of say, because they don't want them to end up voting against whoever made the, reline the districts. Just how it is. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat. That's the system what's in place, and it's really fucked up. And some other states, they do is a more fairer thing. They kind of quit fucking doing this shit, just make it more even, but it differs from state to state, and sometimes from county to county within states, on these things. But typically it's a statewide thing. It's really fucked up. And here's the thing, whoever gets the so-called majority, even though that it's not just Republicans versus Democrats, which we all think that's what it is. No, you also got the third party groups, which are not really a third party. There's several other parties. They get their little spots and whatever. They get their votes. But a lot of times, they just give their votes over to one side. It's oh yeah, we'll just give them all to them. That's what happens. And then, whoever holds the majority in that district gets all of the votes. Even if it's the opposition, they get all of their votes, for them or their opposition, or even the third parties, multitude of other minor parties. They get all their votes because, when it comes down to where it's tied between Democrats and Republicans, they basically do is have friends that were running in those other parties, and they just gave them their votes. So boost them. Whoever gives the votes to one side or the other first, that boosts them just a little above them. Then they get all the votes for that district, and whoever gets the most votes, percentile, of the districts in of that state, then they get all of the votes for the state. And that's kind of fucked up. Because a lot of times, if you really count it, it's the one that won wasn't actually the winner. but they won by some technicality on this situation, which doesn't really reflect of equal fairness of like showing like what was the percentage of how many votes for voted for Republican, who voted for Democrat. Yeah, and it's really fucked up when you really study and look in this. This happens, and it's not just California. People say, "Oh, that's a California thing." That's in every fucking state in this nation is like that. That's not just California. This has been going on, on the East Coast first, and then they brought it all this down here. It's nothing new. It started from the East going westwards, and it continued on of tomfuckery as it is. So yeah. Then you got redlining. That is actually with banking, which still exists to this day, except they don't really want to point it out because first it was like several things. It had to do with several different things that several different groups and organizations were doing at the same time, and their maps really overlap each other on this whole thing, which was called redlining. What it is it's major cities were doing this, of separating, okay, what is what zone, the blacks and the Hispanics, the whites, the Asians and stuff like that. You're like zoning it out, and what is in the red zone would be like, depending on what state you're in, red zone usually means blacks, and in California it's usually for blacks and Hispanics, and plus the poorer neighborhoods, because they shoved all of the so-called undesirables into the poorer neighborhoods and just placed them there, and they redlined it. They outlined that area as like, these are like not good places. Like the cities did this so they could specify where the poorer neighborhoods, because like on the East Coast and stuff, and like Detroit did this, it was not just on race and stuff and skin color. It had to do with, okay, who's the poor, who's the rich. So it didn't matter what your skin color was, it was on an economic divide. So majority it was like blacks and other people, and also the Irish and whatnot. Anybody that could not get a break were in the poor sections and were literally pushed in there, because increasing rents and stuff and literally raising the rents to literally throw the people out of certain areas where they can build it up the way they want it for a certain wealth class, and the ones that couldn't make it and had shitty jobs or whatever, that did a lot of work, that ran the damn city, its day-to-day thing, but could not afford the severe rent increase, and it just increased to a point where they had to go to the poorer neighborhoods, which was also really bad, and it just went downhill and shit. And plus in these poor neighborhoods, even before, like there was an influx of blacks in the northern states and stuff, like in New York and whatever, that's like, where they circulate of what is the bad neighborhoods, the poor areas. That's where they zoned it to do is have heavy industry. That's where you get is your, your power plants, your coal plants and stuff like that, your factories, anything that was polluting the environment. And they didn't want was that shit in the good areas, or, they want, like the good area to be upwind of it, and downwind of them would be the factories in the poorer neighborhoods. And when they start doing this, the poorer neighborhoods, they start getting sicker, and there was diseases and stuff like that, health concerns, especially with lung problems and stuff, which we'll probably find out they also had was lung cancer and shit, not realizing it. Because of this earlier form of redlining, and then it continued on, because cities were doing this. And then when we got insurance companies, they start using this data and redlining. And by the way, the poorer neighborhoods end up being the more costly for an insurance company, saying, oh yeah, we cannot insure people in these areas. We will increase their rates exponentially because it's an unsafe area. Even if it's safe, it's just a poor area of the city or whatever, it's poor neighborhoods. It's like, nope. Depending on what kind of vehicle you did. So if you had was a cheap ass vehicle, then and it was in a poor neighborhood, then your insurance would just be much lower. Because if you had was a high end vehicle and was in a poor neighborhood, the rates would be skyrocket further than it would be like in a rich neighborhood. Just kind of situated. And plus, it changed over time about that, but the insurance companies all do this. But in Los Angeles, it was even more fucking bizarre because you had multiple groups. The city was doing this. The insurance companies were doing this. Were using the same data. So was the health insurance, Well, besides like insurance of like health and housing was doing this. Housing insurance plus, housing development companies. So like trying to see banks were also doing this of who can get loans and who can't. If you lived in the red line districts, the areas that were redlined areas that were literally, they outlined the area with red and usually colored it in, translucent red so they can determine, those are areas that if you had it didn't matter how much money you make, if you lived there, that was your residency in there, even if it's on the border of it, you were denied of any loans. And that's what they did. And nowadays it still exists. They just hide the fact on it. Also, like auto insurance did this. So yeah, it got really fucking bizarre to where all these different companies and also the city itself in Los Angeles doing it at the same time using the same exact data about this and then trying to deny, because the city was doing this because to determine what's a good area, what's the bad area, and also, already had built up of, in the bad area of that would have is the more polluted factories and whatever. But it was also like in the 20th century, it's like, okay, what areas that we're going to do is tear down, tear through it to build was the freeways. So that's what they did. Because on the East Coast, they were just fucking mowing down things. Los Angeles was trying to go like, okay, what's the best thing to do is literally make a wall around the city of the freeway systems, but it just kind of overblown to other groups and whatever, and adding national highways and also state highways in there to appease of the traffic for the city itself, because there's so much traffic going in and out, towards clogging the streets and building these freeways and stuff, to the point where even they are jam-packed to this day, to where want to build more and more stuff for infrastructure of more different roads and shit like this, widening of roads and whatever. And that's where it kind of went berserk, in the mid 20th century when they had this, and they were caught, and same with all the others, like caught red-handed, like, you're all redlining, you're all using the same data, and because if you looked at all their maps, it was the exact same, even though they weren't personally sharing each other's maps. But but they did it for different reasons, and the city of LA was doing this because of freeways were being built in and trying to, how can we save our more valuable areas that make a lot of money, with tourism and whatnot and stuff, and how to divide the city from the poorer areas, and hoping that it becomes so, fucked up in the poorer neighborhoods to where they become vacant so the city can reclaim them and change it over to whoever they wanted to. This was like a long project, which it changed from administration to administration about what to do because everybody had their own little variants on this and changing of things. Beautification was one, was to want to wipe out all the poor neighborhoods and try to turn them into, you know, like giant parks or some shit or whatever, you know, or to make it look like Leave It a Beaver and stuff and whatnot. But, you know, had other ideas or add, you know, massive high rises and whatever, which the high rises end up doing. Yeah. If you ever wonder why our cities are not like New York City, where we have massive towers and shit, like you know, being as tall as New York City. Our major cities are on fault lines, you dipshit. We have earthquakes. We have to have is protection against said things. New York don't have that fucking problem, really. They don't have major quakes where the whole building, you know, and shit like this. Yeah. We have our own little problems here. So we have to adjust. And plus, we have land, you know, so we can expand outwards. While New York City, they took over their island and the other islands, and all they have to do now is go up and go down. That's what they did. They built up and down simultaneously, building up the city. Basically, almost building the city in Metropolis. If you ever seen the different movies and the books, or even read the books, or even the graphic novels that were based off the original German movie known as Metropolis. Whereas this massive city where the working class and the very poor lived at the bottom, which ended up being like underground, while the better populace lived above ground, or you know, lived in the upper parts of the city, where the very wealthy and the elitists and stuff, they lived at the very top. So it was like this weird pyramid, but it was this massive city-state where nobody really went outwards. Everything came in and things were built and whatever. And all of your major infrastructure, things that ran the city, the power and the water and stuff like that, and the trash and all your factories, things that you didn't like, was at the lower ends, at the very bottom, underneath, and all the better stuff was at the top. And yeah, the story is really about a detective that was hired to do was go find a missing person from you know, this rich girl, and plus this detective isn't human. All right. This is a story that has androids and cybernetic peoples, cyborgs and stuff like that. But they didn't really call it that, but that's what it is. You know, people, you know, this detective can hide the fact that he looks human and stuff, but he isn't. He's self-aware and everything, and stuff. Not alien or anything, but an alien that was of humanity, created and whatever. So he goes searching for her, goes throughout the city, goes from the top all the way down, even into the lower bowels, where he ended up finding her connected to a chair with all these wires and tubes and shit like this, and finding out this girl that he's looking for, this missing girl, that she was never human. She was an android. She was a robot, basically. She was an android that was self-aware, but did not know that she was an android. She was like the next evolution of androids that were going to be created, that were passed as humans and stuff. Although she had like that weird mechanical face, like in the movie and stuff, you know, because it was a mask and all this shit, you know, and that was a silent film more or less. But yeah, but even though that's like kind of the basis, but the backdrop and the rest of the story does specifying about what more or less happened to this city becoming the way it is. You know, it was like commentary on their society as a whole, more or less, but in the guise of this weird, hard-boiled, detective story, and he's going after, a missing girl, not realizing that she's an android, she's an automaton. Yeah, yeah. It's not a happy story. It's also, you can say, it's um, a despotic, anti-utopianistic, you know. It also reminds me of a Star Trek episode. Like, actually, a lot of different Star Trek TV, same episode if you really think about it, but in different series, had the same idea. Where you had was the elites were over here, while the ones that actually ran the city, that did all the hard labor, lived shitty, class divide. One of the episodes, I forgot what it was called, where the wealthy people, the ones that controlled the city and stuff, the so-called good people, they lived in these cloud cities. Well, all the pollution and their trash was thrown down on their planet, and the less desirable people were on the bottom, and they were doing all this heavy labor shit, and they were the ones, digging in the mines, and you find out that the mines were dangerous because of the gas that made them stupid and violent, where they would kill each other, and if they came across the people in the cloud cities, they would kill them as well. So there was this massive divide, where Kirk was realizing what it is, and especially with McCoy and stuff like that, they devised was a breathing mask, and he's trying to do is like, hey, we have this breathing implement, give it to your workers so they can end up being better, and how about giving them medical and the same benefits that you have in the city? Let them have that shit too. How about clean up the fucking planet? You're polluting. You're in a nice position because you'll literally throw all your trash onto the world, like literally off of your city into the trash. Astro Boy, and also its original Japanese name and stuff, has the same thing. A lot of dystopian stories are like that, huge class divide. But for some reason, a lot of these extremists want to take these kind of dystopian things as like, hey, that's something we should do. Like, fuck. All they're really doing is trying to destroy our nation. And you think it's new? It ain't. It's not new. When they say some stupid shit, about like how this nation was created, they're talking out of their ass. They don't know. They just claim, oh yeah, we're created under God and all this. Like, God didn't give us this nation. We did. We fought for this land, People fought, the early American settlers and stuff, and became, the colonists of the 13 colonies and stuff. They're the ones that fought and preserve of their ability to self-govern and to form a new nation. It wasn't God given us and it was mandated by heaven. No. It was mandated by people at gunpoint, shooting other assholes that were trying to hold them oppressed by gunpoint. And also, there was slavery still existing on all sides. So nobody was a good person. Well, just to tell you, slaves were fucking expensive, so it was only a few people that, or certain families that were able to have slaves because they were wealthy enough. Everybody else was too damn poor. They couldn't have a goddamn slave. Even if they could afford one slave, even if it was a crippled, fucked up slave, that was about to die, they still wouldn't have enough money to feed their ass as well as everybody else if they spent all their money on that one decrepit, broken down slave that's almost close to dying anyways. Looks like a goddamn zombie and shit. Can't do anything. Just like, while you have it. For the prestige, I'll got myself a slave. Kill me now. I don't know if that actually happened like that, but that would have been funny. But it's like, yeah. The thing is, only wealthy people were able to do that. And slavery just continued on, just under new names, under new regimes, especially in America. And we like to do is push a lot of that stuff under the rug. We should. Also, quit changing the fucking flags. Like, thinking, oh, I just got used to how these so-called racist flags. No. The bars and stars go back before the Civil War. And by the way, what you think is the Confederate flag, that is not the flag of the Confederacy. That is a distorted version of, because the original flag is square, not rectangular. It's the battle flag of Virginia. It's the Virginia battle flag. It's not actually the flag of the Confederate States of America. It's just idiots that proclaim that it is, but it's actually just the Virginian battle flag. You can take any flag from any battle flag of any unit of the Confederacy and claim it to be the Confederacy. Hell, the Confederacy could not even declare what is the flag of the Confederacy because they had so many flags. It wasn't like every Confederate unit had was that flag, the red flag with the bars and stars, the blue bars with the white stars on it. No, that was Virginia that had that. The other state militias that was in the South and the other Confederate units, they didn't have that flag. They had their own flags. That was nothing like that. They were mainly gray, but early on, both sides wore blue because that's the uniforms that they had, And it was the South that actually started the whole shit before the separation of the states, before the Confederacy was built. Yeah. People that were in power that were trying to do was undermine everything. What they did was got their local militias to assault government installations, take them over. Like, literally, governors were doing things to undermine of the national security, and yeah, outright theft. But here's also the dumbest thing the South has ever done. I mean, it's the most fucking retarded thing they ever did. Okay. New Orleans. All right, when Mississippi, went into towards the Confederacy, all of their mints, the federal mints, this is what happened. Nobody took any of the money that was being produced when it was turned over into the Confederacy. Everyone that was there did what they did, like they closed out and whatever. They do their thing, and nobody took any money. They all left the building, and then the building was closed, sealed up. Nobody entered it. It was filled to the brim with so much silver coins and also U.S. currency and stuff, of bills and shit. Untouched, uncirculated. The South could have easily took that building over and several other, of mints, especially the New Orleans mint that had was a shitload of silver coins, silver dollars and stuff. High grade silver too. Brand new, freshly mint, and everybody marched in. Security walked away and shit like this, and it was closed off. Nobody attacked it. Nobody entered it. until after the war, when everything was going to reclamation and when they were opening up the old facilities again, that was untouched. They opened it up, and all the money that was printed on that last day, including minted of coinage, of silver coins, was still there. And all of the reserves of, of the metal and stuff that wasn't melted down, or, things, to making coins and shit like this, all that silver that they had, massive things of silver and shit, all the equipment was still in working order. That's when all the coins end up being like circulated again. It's kind of dumb fuckery. They could have just did was use that, but no. They end up going bankrupt and major inflation, and plus King Jeff the First, Jefferson Davis, he was ridiculed on both sides. The Confederacy and also in the United States, both criticized them and both called them King Jeff the First. The South had a lot of depictions of him in their papers of literally tearing him down, including his governancy, especially of the whole thing of overprinting and devaluing of the dollar and stuff to fraction of cents, bills that had fractional cents on it, like and a lot of the unprinted bills, like massive rolls and sheets of this stuff, was sold to England, and it would end up being with the Bank of London. And the Bank of London, after the war, tried to go to the U.S. and exchange it. And the U.S. is like, no, that's not our currency. The Confederacy's currency, and it don't exist, and we don't recognize it. Yeah, they wouldn't accept it, and they tried going to the southern states, and the southern states like, nope. Even though some of the people that were in power during the Confederacy were still in power, with some oversights and stuff, and they tried to do was get rid of it, That's why there was rules and laws to make sure that when they were found out who they were actually imprisoned or thrown out of the position. Because with the reclamation, they did was put stringent controls on who can vote and who could be elected for any political office. And basically these rules also apply to everyone. So basically the ones that, were insurrectionists, it plainly states out, all forms of insurrection, all insurrectionists will not be allowed any office from the high to the low, so basically your local, governancy of any kind can never get any kind of, political office of any kind from the lowest levels all the way to presidency. It's barred from them. So basically the ones that were in control and were well known were thrown out of office. The ones that can still have control because they still had wealth of land and their slaves were gone, but they still controlled their slaves because even though they had them freed, they still had them tending to their lands, and they charged them for everything and paying them very shit little. So basically slavery with extra steps, kind of like what the North have done before the war, with their form of slavery as war, which they say, oh, they're not slaves, they're not indentured servants, they can come and go, they just have to pay their bill, which is the company towns, where the company town would have like their the company's factories and mines and mills and stuff like that. So they own the whole entire land, including the housing and stuff and whatever else, and the company store. So if you live there, you work in the company businesses and whatnot, and your soul is owned by the company, basically lock, stock, and barrel. And you're going deeper and deeper in debt because no matter how much you make, your rent and the expenses to live day to day, like food and water and electricity and stuff like that, and fuel for vehicles and whatever, the cost of that outweighs about what you make. So you can never get ahead. You're always sinking deeper and deeper in debt forever. So, and when you die, your debt is carried over to your descendants, your kids, and your grandchildren, so far. And your spouse that survived carries your debt. And when your spouse dies, and then the debt carries over to the kids as well, because the kids already have the debt of of one parent. But if both parents die, they still get the debt of both parents, just how it is, and they will still accumulate debt as well, and their kids will, and go on and forever and ever until things happen to where company towns get literally dried up to where the companies like fuck it off, to where it's now desolate, where people can't even leave, and everything that used to run the city and these company towns cease to exist, and there's barely even housing or whatever, because it's all dilapidated, even though people are trying to, they can't afford to go anywhere. They're stuck. Like, economically, they could not afford, because they got no money to go to anywhere else. They're like close up being homeless, and a lot of times some of these company towns are so fucked over to where there's nothing running, where like cities and like other cities or whatever just literally forgot that they exist. And same thing with the states and the federal government, just like almost non-existent. There's no mail or anything going to these places. They have to go miles and miles to the nearest little town or whatever that has like a mailbox that they could rent. And, they live over here, but they still can't afford anywhere else. But luckily, nobody really knows that their little company towns, or what was, still exist. And then some of these companies, they find out and they said, no, get the fuck out. Like, then when they did, they're like ghost towns. Out west, we had kind of the same thing, but there were ghost towns now. Instead of being company towns, more or less, as you think, like on the East Coast, these towns were mining towns, which, yeah, you could say they were company towns, because it was one rich guy that was a mine, and the town was built basically to house the workers for that mine. In a sense, yeah, it is a company town and stuff, but the people that mined, they actually made a lot more money and were doing better, even though it was like kind of primitive comparative of the East Coast of their company towns. But it was also very dangerous. So no matter what money that they made, and they could make quite a bit mining gold and whatever, because a lot of them gave like good incentives, whatever. So, but it was heavily dangerous and didn't bother with safety concerns, because figured even if I give them a lot of money or whatever, they wouldn't be able to spend it, because there's not really much to spend around here on anything. We'll bring in some shit, but make sure that just enough to keep them appeased, but not want them to know that they're wealthy or whatever, to be extravagant and whatnot, because it's usually these little mining towns were in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, where there was only just wagon ruts, like dirt pathways to get to whatever major road or whatever. It was like trudging through dangerous territory and shit to get to these little towns and whatnot. And it was mainly just to moving of cargo, via horses and wagons and stuff, moving shit. To the point where, these people would just die because of health concerns, or just being crushed from fallen rock or whatever. Shit happens. When you just throw safety concerns out the window, shit will happen and people will die. So, you can easily obtain the money back, and plus whatever was used there, the owner of the mine gets the money back anyways. Just how it is. Kind of fucked up, but yeah. And then sometimes when it becomes unprofitable to continue mining or some shit or something, these mines close for multitude of different reasons, and they're like ghost town. Well, actually, yeah, in some sense, that's what we call them, is ghost towns. But do they have ghosts? Yeah, it's on what you believe, anyways. But if things continue, all this nation will be like these ghost towns and these company towns. You know, you think you're going to live in prosperity until things get worse and worse, and then your name is up for the execution and whatnot. You know, it's okay that others are being killed. You know, things are happening to others. You know, bad things. It's like, oh, it doesn't matter. You know, bad things happen to them, but at least I'm okay. You know, until it affects you personally, and then it's way too late. You know, just how it is. To the point where all these people that claim they want to, of this ideology of this great America or this great Germany or great whatever, it's all Nazi shit in retrospect, they're creating a dystopian future where they're literally trying to destroy this country, and pretty much these radical nutbaggery, Christians. I'm not saying all Christians like that, just the fucked up ones. They have this idea of Armageddon, and they're trying to expedite it. They just want everything destroyed. They think it's for the betterment of everything, wipe out people and everything, just kill all because they think, oh, I'm holier than thou. I'll be, going straight to heaven. Until they find out, no, you ain't going anywhere. You're not gonna be anything. No. So, I know it's kind of long, but I just don't know anymore. Really, what the hell is going on with you people?